Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Beasley. Now, as a teacher or an educator, you should be concerned with the things that might prevent or hinder your students from learning. And this could be a lot of different things. It could be how you teach or how you deliver your instruction. It could be the resources, the materials, or the activities that you use. It could even be your class environment. And it could be some school anxieties that the student has, or maybe something happening outside of the classroom. Or it could even be you. Maybe your own biases are getting in the way. Regardless, you should recognize that there needs to be some flexibility in the classroom learning environment, and there should be a deliberate effort to reduce some of those barriers to learning that your students are going to have, creating this equal opportunity for every student to learn. And this has always been a goal and purpose of UDL, or Universal Design for Learning. So here, I'll give a general overview of UDL, discuss some of its benefits, and review the basic principles behind it. Developed in 1984 by Harvard researchers, Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, was developed as an approach to improve teaching and learning. And it's focused on students being able to receive access to content differently, helping students relate to and engage with content, how students demonstrate learning and understanding of content, and helping students to self-differentiate these based on instructional options and different activities that you provide. Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is an approach to curriculum and instruction that's designed to minimize barriers or challenges and maximize learning for all students. Each K-12 student is going to bring different experiences from their own background, their individual strengths, their different needs and influences and interests to the class, and UDL takes all of those things into consideration when developing and providing instructional content. The basic purpose of UDL is to provide all students, regardless of their background, with an equal opportunity to learn and be successful in the classroom. Now, as stated in the UDL guidelines, its goal is to support what's called learner agency. And learner agency includes the student's ability or their capacity to actively participate in their learning process. UDL guidelines state instruction and learning should be purposeful, reflective, resourceful, authentic, strategic, and action-oriented. The idea is to recognize that the students in your class are an extremely diverse group of learners. And as a teacher, you should plan and develop your instruction that considers the learning needs of all of your students, regardless of things like their cultural background, their socioeconomic status, or their academic ability. You should do whatever you can to learn about your students and learn as much about them as you can, and figure out ways to connect with them, to use familiar content to get them interested in learning, and deliver instruction in different ways to address the learning styles of all students. UDL is based on the scientific insight into how we learn, addressing 3 neural or brain networks. The affective network, which is responsible for things like regulating emotion and processing. The recognition network, which allows us to identify and understand information, ideas, and concepts. And the strategic network, which is responsible for how we plan, how we organize, and how we act within our particular environment. UDL is focused on a set of principles for helping teachers design inclusive curriculum and instruction. And these principles provide a foundation for creating strategies and selecting and using instructional materials and assessments and other tools to connect with, teach, and assess all students. And these UDL principles can be applied to any instructional environment or grade level. And there are benefits for both students and educators. For students, UDL offers equitable access to learning by providing a variety of resources, tools, and multiple approaches to content that's designed for each individual student and based on their individual needs. It allows students the opportunity to demonstrate their learning in a way that best suits them. So, for example, not only using a written test for all students, but giving assessment options, maybe an essay or a project, a presentation, or a demonstration. So in other words, giving options for students to demonstrate what they've learned. For educators or teachers, UDL provides a framework for designing the course curriculum and lesson plans. It helps to identify and minimize the barriers to learning that might be hidden in those individual teaching methods, removing some of those biases or negative assumptions that we typically bring to the classroom. And it helps educators promote a positive and responsive classroom environment where students feel comfortable sharing information, comfortable receiving feedback as well. And these three UDL principles can be applied to any instructional content area. And addressing these principles ensures that all learners, all of your students, can access and participate in meaningful and challenging learning opportunities and clearly demonstrate what they've learned. So, what exactly are these three principles? Providing multiple means of engagement is one. Learn about your students and get to know what interests them and incorporate those interests within your instruction. You want to give students choices, of course, within reason. Allow them to maybe select their own books or reading materials, for example. You want to help them learn from their mistakes and look for ways to motivate your students by connecting instruction to their interests, their backgrounds, and their experiences. And you can use things like game-based learning activities or maybe gamifying your assignments. And in your lessons, include things that are relevant and familiar to students. Make content more applicable so students become interested in what they're learning, and that's actually going to help with motivating your students. Also, you can work to minimize things that might distract or those things that might intimidate students from learning. So, providing notes or outlines, posting materials and resources either in the class or maybe on an accessible website. Also, things like providing video captions and using assistive technologies. These are all helpful in removing some of those barriers to learning and gaining students' interest. Principle number 2 is providing multiple means of representation. And this means presenting your content and information in different ways. You can connect your content to students' prior learning and check for their background knowledge to see what students are familiar with or what they may have previously learned in another class, and then use different materials to highlight important content, written information, audio, hands-on activities, manipulatives, videos, graphics, animation. Introduce and incorporate vocabulary in different ways also, and allow students the opportunity to interact with all of those things in different ways as well. And because it helps when students recognize what they're learning and why, you should also ensure that your learning goals are very clear, they're reflected on often, and reinforced throughout your instruction. Check for understanding frequently. You want to use those informal assessment techniques and allow students time to engage with content and reflect on what they're learning. And principle number 3 is providing multiple means of action and expression. And this is not only giving students different options to demonstrate what they know, it also includes providing clear and meaningful feedback and offering support for different levels of proficiency or those different levels of learning. You can use written tests, oral tests, presentations, group projects, or even some type of artistic representation to allow students an opportunity to demonstrate what they know and what they've learned. UDL also suggests giving students time to reflect on and process information, trying not to rush learning, and allowing students opportunities to read material, to listen to material, to write about and engage with that material using information in different contexts. All of this helps them to engage deeper with the content, to better demonstrate what they know, and it also helps with academic language development. UDL guidelines include a lot more than just providing presentations or lecture handouts or maybe adding captions to a video. When UDL guidelines are effectively incorporated, students are provided with multiple opportunities for accessing information and engaging with content. And that accessibility and educational equity also applies to neurodivergent students or students with different disabilities. And the physical environment of learning spaces is also included as part of UDL practices. And this was a major part of the original development of UDL, meeting the requirements of ADA or the Americans with Disabilities Act, and also providing access for individuals with disabilities. So UDL guidelines also include things like using manipulatives, ensuring that there are clear large print signs posted for those who may be visually impaired, making sure you have appropriate furniture and making sure that your class layout and organization is appropriate. And this depends on whether you have those individual seats or desks or the large tables. You want to make sure that you and your students can move throughout the classroom freely. You want to make sure that there's wheelchair accessibility, also having non-slip walking surfaces or maybe changes in floor levels visibly indicated. UDL also includes ensuring that you have audio options for students who may be deaf or hard of hearing, and even the use of service animals is accepted within the UDL guidelines. Other considerations can include things like color-coded labels, note-taking apps, text-to-speech programs, noise-canceling headphones, maybe those fidget devices, and even making sure that you have adjustable lighting. Because when lessons and instruction in the classroom environment all considers UDL principles, all students have equal access to materials and resources, which means there's educational equity within all aspects of instruction. And every student is provided with what is needed to help them learn and be successful. There should be fairness and this level of inclusiveness within your teaching approaches, and each student should receive what they need and how they need it. A good way to take a practical and realistic approach to UDL is to begin with a class profile. Maintain a list or record of students' backgrounds, their strengths, their interests, and their funds of knowledge. By the way, I created a video on funds of knowledge and asset-based instruction and how to create what's called a funds of knowledge inventory matrix. So check that out if you need to know more information about that. So after you create this class profile or your inventory matrix, when you start to plan your lessons and your activities and set up your class, you can do so with UDL principles in mind. And this also helps to develop realistic activities, more engaging assignments, and meaningful goals. It adds variety in your teaching strategies and your methods, and it makes sure that you have a flexible learning environment. So UDL is an approach to teaching and learning that accommodates the needs and the abilities of all students, and it gives them an equal opportunity to be successful. The focus is on the principles of UDL, which are engagement, representation, and action and expression. It provides learning opportunities to engage and motivate students and maintain their interest. It provides instructional content and information in different ways, helping you make sure that you vary your teaching strategies. And it allows students some time to complete assignments or tasks and show what they know in different ways as well. Understanding and applying these UDL approaches as you plan your instruction helps you to be more intentional and deliberate in all of your efforts to help all of your students learn effectively.